Now, I'd like to talk about something glaringly obvious and yet very subtle at the same time. Now, the Latin title of this video means the mystery proves its existence. And what am I referring to? I'm referring to the Manosphere and MGTOW specifically. When I talk about the Manosphere, I talk about the POA community, MGTOW, various branches of that and what have you. But what all of this has something to do with is the fact that there is an initial mystery regarding the intersexual relationship that exists between men and women. Which is to say, most people don't understand what's going on. And as per the issues discussed in my video, Let's Pretend, there is a concentrated effort to deny sex realism and to deny that there are any differences between men and women. Now, riddle me this. If in fact the conventional wisdom were true, if men and women were virtually identical, if there were no differences in preferences, reproductive strategies, etc., well, frankly speaking, few to any of the problems we can observe in society would exist. The divorce rates, that is to say, those people, the sex that initiates divorce most often, approximately 70% of the time, it wouldn't be that. It would be an even split, maybe 50-50. There wouldn't be differentiated complaints in the context of relationships and marriage. Perhaps most important to the context I'm talking about right now is that MGTOW, as a concept, as individual men, wouldn't exist. The POA community wouldn't exist. Everything related to the Manosphere wouldn't exist because there would be no mystery. We grow up in a society that claims that things are a certain way. At the same time, it, as claiming that they're a certain way, maintains that these things are mysterious and cannot be understood. You know, women can't live with them, can't live without them. The great mystery, the grand mystery. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I mean, it's alluded to, the mystery, but rarely, if ever, do you get the details. And more often than not, you'll hear something like, oh, you're generalizing. That is, of course, the standard reply to anything a MGTOW content producer, even POAs might claim. I'm not a huge fan of POAs, but a lot of the things they say are true. And so, there is a mystery, an initial mystery at least, with regards to men and women. People tend to ignore it. They tend to cling to the received wisdom that they have been indoctrinated with throughout their lives. Men, above all, men tend to cling to this. And so many men throughout their lives end up scratching their heads, best case scenario, or sometimes 6 feet under in the dirt, in the worst case scenario, with all manner of variation in between, you know, depression, emotional damage, loss, physical harm, whatever. Because the mystery, up until now, at least in the modern context, the ancients understood the differences between the sexes very well and spoke quite often of it. But say in the last 50 or so years, there's been a mystery that has been maintained as a mystery, sometimes alluded to as non-mysterious. And the best case scenario in the context of conventional explanations is that men and women are basically the same. We're all human beings, tra-la-la-la, let's just all fucking get along. But the very fact that my channel exists, or a Barbarossa channel exists, or a Spetsnaz, or whatever, all of these channels prove that there is a mystery here that needs to be deciphered. Or at the very least, a mystery that can be deciphered. And some men choose to decipher that mystery, choose to try to figure it all out, at least to the best of their capacity. And of course, it really rubs people the wrong way. It goes against the grain of received wisdom. But the fact of the matter is, the Manosphere these days is massive, and if the received wisdom and proclaimed truths of society at large regarding the sexes and intersexual interaction were true, the Manosphere wouldn't exist. We would all be getting along fine. I would have maybe married or something, some ex-girlfriend of mine, because, you know, men and women are the same, and their behaviors are identical, and we can understand each other perfectly well. But that's not the case. Divorce rates are skewed. Repeatedly, women say they want different things to men. And men clearly want different things to women. So, what do? Conventional wisdom doesn't tell you anything. They just tell you to, man up maybe, or, get into the queue, or you made the, the classic, it's all your fault. You keep on making the wrong decisions. It's all on you. Maybe there's some truth to that, maybe not. Men and women are basically the same. Everyone is an individual. We're all human beings, blah, blah, blah. Now I ask you, is there anything in those catchphrases that remotely resembles an explanation? No. They're just empty platitudes. Like so much of what we hear is resistance to quote-unquote manosphere wisdom. Now, at least in the modern context, the Manosphere, and specifically the olden days of MGTOW, not the Tradcon version, but the Golden Age, if you want to refer to it, was an honest attempt to decipher male and female nature, to really get into the depths of what it means to be a man, and also what it means to be a woman. And some of that is quite ugly, and has been quite ugly, and people don't want to look at the ugliness. There's ugliness to men, and there's ugliness to women. Now, by way of contrast in society, we more often than not hear that most of the ugliness is related to men. Men are the ugly ones, not just physically, but the humans that produce the most harm, that are evil, whatever, misandry, however you want to term it. But there is a mystery that begs for explanation. A mystery that begs to be resolved and solved. And the fact that MGTOW exists, or the Manosphere and the PUAs, the entire Manosphere exists, this is the actual proof that there is a mystery here, and that some people want to decipher it and understand it. Nobody else really wants to do this. I mean, there's some effort in regards to sex realism in the alt-right to some degree. I mean, the alt-right wants to sort of keep women under wraps so they can produce their white children or whatever, but it's pretty minimal. And certainly in the cultural libertarian sphere, like Sargon of Akkad and the rest of them, there's almost none of that. These people, and I'll be addressing the concept of trends later, don't think trends are important enough to address, or perhaps it's just not good enough to line their pockets with, that is, addressing human trends. But the fact of the matter is, all the objections you hear, to date, I can't, you get someone like this idiot holographic sentience, who essentially will just say some version of Nawalt repeatedly on every video I put out, or a video that Coltane puts out. Nawalt, Nawalt, Nawalt. Therefore, you're generalizing. How many times have we heard the argument you're generalizing as the ultimate knockdown argument of everything we've presented? The differences between men and women. It is scary and perhaps terrifying to accept these things. And I've gone into great depth in discussing these matters precisely because it is terrifying. It has, even to me, been scary to realize my greatest fears, to feel certain things, to feel a degree and depth of loneliness that I had never felt in my life before when confronting effectively what were terrifying truths about intersexual relations between men and women. The depth of loneliness that a man feels that men don't talk about because they're afraid to. I mean, things like that. That is what MGTOW has essentially been for. Many other things as well, but nobody wants to talk about it. It's scary. We don't want to conceive of men as human beings, but more importantly, the proof is in the pudding. Why had Barbarossa gone on a quest to understand this stuff and explain it? Because it was fucking mysterious, and we were being told a narrative that simply didn't match up with what we observed time and again, and more importantly, didn't match up with the realities and lived experiences of what amounts to now millions of men across the globe that can confirm and corroborate everything we've observed. It's just a giant coincidence, Generalizations don't count. Nobody wants to actually deal with the data. And when they do, they try to sugarcoat it. This is why I'm so opposed to the pretense. And this is why I think pretending is more damaging than it is helpful. Despite all of the pain that we have incurred as a result of these realizations. Because it's absolutely terrifying when you think about it. How alien, say, the female psychology is to the male psychology. Who wants to actually take that into account? Who wants to take into account, romantic love versus opportunistic love? These really conflicted, opposing mechanisms. It all goes back, of course, to reproduction. Limiting factor in reproduction versus, non-limiting factor in reproduction. Opportunistic love arose because women could afford to be opportunistic. They were almost guaranteed to reproduce. Men had to compete. True love, romantic love, that level of devotion, well, that's a sign of your reliability in a sense. It's a sign of your willingness to render resources unto a woman. Devotion, male devotion to the woman, to the female, is a byproduct of his reproductive status, ultimately. And there's not much we can do about that. But the fact of the matter is that all the naysayers are just that. They're naysayers. And I've never in my entire YouTube career, if you want to call it that, or my time here, heard a really good refutation of some of the most basic truths related to MGTOW content, the good content at least. Or even for that matter, some of the PUA rhetoric. There is a mystery that is no longer mysterious to most of us who talk about these topics regarding sex realism. But other people want to maintain the mystery because it's in their best interests, because they're afraid. I ultimately think fear drives it. Nobody wants to look into the depths of human nature because it's terrifying. We're irrational, strange bipedal apes that are living in an environment now that has nothing to do with how we evolved. And our hardware and our software, it's all going topsy-turvy. And people don't want to address that. They look at themselves as, atomized individuals in a certain context, in a certain environment. Maybe it's Los Angeles or New York or Seattle or London or Berlin or wherever. Without the context of distal causes, without the context of millions of years of evolution in terms of hominid evolution, eventually Homo sapiens, this will get us nowhere, and it never will. And if I have any message to convey with regards to MGTOW, is that at the very least we're trying to take a step forward. At the very least we're trying to understand things. Things that frighten people. No man in his right mind, no husband in his right mind wants to acknowledge the distinct possibility that his wife not only doesn't love him, but to the extent that she doesn't love him the same way as he loves her. Look at all those cheating stories that I referenced. It's a mess. Human nature is a mess. And people would rather veil the mess, keep it mysterious, and put it all on the back burner for a future generation to explain and decipher. I'm not willing to do that. I'm going to say it's been a terrifying journey for me. Say the past 6 or 7 years, maybe 8 if you want to include my purple pill phase. But I don't think I could go back, even if I wanted to that blue pill confusion, lack of understanding. It creates anger. I don't want to feel those things anymore. I also don't want to feel despair that arises from misunderstanding. People are people, and human beings are human beings. This is the big thing. We need to try to explain human nature in all its facets. Whether it comes to human biodiversity in terms of genetic differences, sex differences, it must be explained so we don't wallow in this miasma of misunderstanding. This is the only way forward. Explanation and exploration. The proof is in the pudding. With regards to sex realism in particular, the Manosphere, PUAs, MGTOW would not exist if there were not a mystery being presented to us that begged for explanation. And of course, there is no explanation forthcoming from the mainstream, from society at large. So we have needed to take it upon ourselves to engage in the explanation. Imperfect as some of these explanations might be, we do our best. And we're the only ones doing it. So, with that said, I bid you a good evening, take care, and as always, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.